Hello and welcome back to the Troutman Pepper Battery and Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Durasmo, and today I have on the program George Kuo. Welcome to the program, George.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
George is the Senior Director of Products and Solutions, Product Management at Canadian Solar, Inc. And George is going to speak to us today a little bit, I think, about the storage side of their business, even though they have solar in their name, but he's also got an extensive background in renewables. So I think we can get into a lot of different topics. George, just really quickly, you seem like a California guy. You've got UC Irvine, University of Southern California, and Stanford Business in your educational background. And then you also have an extensive career. And like I said, a lot of experience on the renewable side, and now you're into storage. But why don't I hand the microphone off to you, so to speak, and just if you could tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now and on the solar space, and a little bit about Canadian Solar and their entry into the storage space.
Happy to. You're right. I'm a California person. Grew up in California, beach towns. Background is engineering. Did a lot of stuff in different types of electronic designs and so on and so forth. Got into the power electronic in roughly 2014 timeframe. And that's how I started getting closer to the renewable. Joined Canadian Solar shortly after. Been here about 7 years. Been a great experience. For those of you who may not be so familiar with Canadian Solars, we are one of the largest PV module manufacturing in the world. Was started in 2001 in Ontario, Canada. And some of the information that you can see from our most recent earning announcements. For example, we're shipping upward 35 to 38 gigawatts worth of PV modules worldwide for 2023. Those relatively big. But the other part of Canadian Solar that's probably less known is we also develop solar projects. And along that trend, we start getting to the energy storage related products. So again, quoting the most recent earning announcements, we are expecting to construct and commission about 1.4 gigawatts hours worth of the storage in 2022. And overall, a pipeline of over 40 gigawatt hours. So we spent quite a bit of investments and developments in that area.
Well, appreciate that. And in my own preparation for this, I looked at the residential side. It looks like you've got a lot of interesting things going on there. And so why don't we start off there with the so-called EP Cube and the virtual power plant concept. Maybe you could just tell our audience a little bit about the things you've got going on the resi side.
Yeah, great. Residential storage is a very exciting space and very rapidly growing. I think the need for some type of backup or stabilize the home energy is probably very well documented by now with all the different natural disasters in Texas, California, Florida, etc. Canadian Solar got into this space in somewhat related to our involvement in the utility side. We look at residential energy as a growth path, also a very good complementary to the solar business that we do, right? As a clean energy concept. Eternal Planet is a wholly owned subsidiary of Canadian Solar. The whole segment of that subsidiary is to develop and focusing residential energy storage. We actually do our own module design, vertically integrated with our power conversion systems. So what that means is we control both the designs as well as the supply of the residential storage. Okay, so why is that important? This product is a end consumer electronic, if you will, right? So you got to have a stable supply and also different type of features that make sense for a homeowner. So some of the things that we look at besides your typical capacity, power output, different type of features to control your home energy flow, if you will. But more importantly, how to adapt the interface with all those different array of growing features, such as EV charger, diesel generator, or emergency backup. And on the software side, the concept we just briefly talked about, virtual power. The way I like to describe this is homeowner has a way to consume energy with PV and so on. He also has the ability to supply energy out to the grid. You don't know when to supply to get the best rate. You don't know when to supply to help stabilize grid. For that, you need a different entity, one level up. Probably too complicated for a homeowner to figure out what to do, how to sell it, and so on and so forth. So the virtual power plant is through an entity that control the interaction with the wholesale market of the energy and buy it from the consumer, which will be the homeowner. All right. What does that mean to the homeowner? All that stuff sounds great, but what does that mean? Well, we change the conversation from asking homeowner, hey, you can invest money to build a PV plus storage so you can save money, right? That's the typical dialogue. You'll reduce your costs, whether it's save money. How about we change that conversation to, hey, you can invest on PV plus storage so now I can make money, right?
Yeah, that's always been the challenge, right? Exactly as you said, the value proposition traditionally, if you put rooftop solar on or solar plus storage, is okay, you're going to save a bunch of money. You might have backup power if you got a storage component, but it's always been a challenge to take the next level. And okay, but how about selling power back to the grid or selling it to the wholesale market? And that's the real leap. It sounds like you guys are trying to tackle that.
Exactly. So how do we get there? How do we participate?
That was gonna be my next question.
There are a lot of entities on the market to organize this, right? Our participation is making our hardware in our software transparent and interface with those entities. So we become a qualified supplier for those entities. What that means to the homeowners, when they buy our system, they can sign up or pre-sign up with those entities. You'll be directly hook up to it. Only thing that a homeowner would need to understand is there are certain type of commitments when they're asking for energy input. You agree to supply the energy.
So you guys are an aggregator in that regard.
Yes, yes, we are. Mainly because there's different regions, different requirements, so on and so forth. It's a little bit hard for us to try to tackle all at once. Rather working with specific localized entity, it makes sense for us.
Well, which regions are you active in?
We're looking at California and the East Coast, Boston's and North, and then go from there.
And you're right about the rules being different, right? In each region, the California ISO's rules are going to be different than, say, the New York ISO's rules or PJM or whoever. It sounds like what you're saying is let Canadian Solar take on that headache. You, as the homeowner, just sign up for our program and then we can do the rest, basically. Sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what we strive to, right? Make this simpler for a homeowner to agree to and less headache for an installer to try to explain everything.
Well, the policymakers in Washington and at FERC should love you guys because, well, I remember back when some of the past chairmen, I mean, it was always this challenge about, hey, how do we tie this all together? We've got great price signals at the wholesale level, but trying to get the residential homeowner to react and behave accordingly to those wholesale price signals is a challenge because there's a little bit of a disconnect there because you've got the intermediary of the wholesale market participant. This is a way, it sounds like, for you guys to connect it all together and have a way for residential consumers, in essence, to be responding to price signals at the wholesale level.
Yeah, absolutely. So just adding another compelling events for everyday homeowner to participate in clean energy, right? Which is the ultimate goal for all of us.
Right. Well, since this podcast is focused on storage, for the Eternal Planet, for EP Cube, in terms of the storage aspect, is the storage charged by way of the on-site solar?
So that's a good question. The answer is yes and more, right? What makes us a little bit different than the rest of it is we try to make the adoption of energy storage a little bit easier for homeowner. You know, different houses have different requirements. Typically, we describe PV only system as a DC couple into the battery. And we also have what you call it AC couples. That means you can tie into existing PV that's already converted into AC into the battery. So loosely speaking, there's a DC couple storage and there's AC couple storage. Well, EPQ can support both. What I mean is our PCS power conversion system has ability to tie directly into your PV array, like your solar panel, comes as DC and charge our battery, convert that so to be used at home. But what can also tie it into an existing system, which is already supplying to your AC panel, call that the AC couple, and use that to interact, charge, and whatnot. And we do this by having this smart gateway concept, like a flow control, energy control. I can control the energy flow from the PV into your house load, or from the AC into house load, or charging into the battery, or in case of EV charger, direct the energy into the EV charger. So manage all that. Makes it simpler.
Now I understand the smart gateway software concept that I read about in your company's materials. That's a good explanation. I appreciate that. No, it sounds like if people are interested in getting involved with their homes on the residential side, that you're certainly a company they should be looking at. Like I said, you're doing a lot of work to tie together what I think policymakers want, which is that link between price signals and the residential end use consumers. So that's all very good and exciting stuff. Well, let me shift gears to SolBank. Maybe you could speak for a minute about SolBank. We've already kind of hit the utility side a little bit, but maybe just go into that a little bit more.
Sure. As I had said earlier, part of the Canadian Solar's business is to develop and build solar projects, right? And energy storage becomes bigger and bigger parts of it. It's huge pipeline, huge amount of commission and construction projects we have kind of drive us into building our own battery, right? So again, we want to be in more control of our supply. So vertically design and manufacturing battery modules for the utility size. That's kind of what we were doing the last 2 years. The product, as results, is a containerized battery system we call a SolBank. It's 40-foot containers, roughly 2.8 megawatt hours, self-contained lithium iron box fit chemistry. And it has some pretty nifty technical and safety features, right, based on our project development and construction experience. As an example, to ensure a better longevity of a battery, we have what we call active balancing battery management system. That is to average out all the different battery cells stage of charge, therefore being able to have a longer lifetime. And the other part is safety. Last thing you want to do is having some thermal runaway issues in it without control. So it's a containerized with humidity control, liquid cooling, all that good stuff, different type of fire and smoke detections, venting and whatnot. Altogether, it's designed and validated to be 9450A compliance. So containments of fire within cells, within module, within container. That's what 9450A is for. So do all that.
Well, appreciate that because the thermal runaway issue has been a big issue. But talk to me for a second about the battery chemistry. You were saying you've got some exciting battery chemistry. I think I'd like to geek out on that for a minute because we've had a lot of different approaches where we've had guests on this podcast talk about they're obviously not giving away their commercial secrets, but they've gone into a little bit about their unique battery chemistry. So I was wondering if you could do the same on that.
Yeah, I've heard from your previous podcasts. And there are some exciting stuff, right? Battery chemistry is a balance between high performance, high density, and safety, right? Higher density typically means that you have lower combustible temperature, your runaway temperature. So it's kind of compromised. And I am not a material science expert. So your guest or a previous podcast sounds very smart to me in that respect. For us, we are looking on balance between the density, performance, and the safety. And with the safety being probably a more important aspect for us. We building this large utility projects, it's important. By the way, we do the same thing for our EPQ. So we use a lithium iron phosphate. It's more stable chemistry, more proven. I don't think there's too much of a secret there.
No, no, no. Lithium iron phosphate, right. I think that's fairly well known and it's reliable based on at least what I've learned and heard about in this space. I was just curious because there's been a lot of variations on lithium ion. There's also, as we said in the past podcast episodes, we've had folks using other materials, things like vanadium, other different ways of coming at it. So zinc. I always like to ask about that because I think there's a lot of exciting work going on in that regard. And I totally understand what you're saying about a balance, right? Between energy density, all the different factors that you have to weigh, safety. It sounds like you guys have a balance that you've struck that you're comfortable with and that's working well for you.
Definitely.
I'm curious, your background in the renewable energy space. Now, how has that helped you as you've tried to develop these products on the storage side?
That's interesting questions. There's always been battery, right? Just how you charge a battery. You can charge it with a diesel generator. People do that on the off-road worlds and whatnot. What ties into it is we sell PV system, community solar does. That's a clean energy, renewable. The problem with that is I only generate during the daytime. What I
Right.
do at nighttime. Sure would be great to be able to store some of the energy I generated so I can use it at night. And also, weather conditions, right? So on and so forth. So it's no brainer. For us to get into it is, well, there's natural evolutions of how people viewing the energy. A lot of our customers are the one that live off grid with a diesel generator and so on and so forth. Renewable electricity sounds like a great idea.
A long time we've talked about the importance of solar plus storage. And I know there's it's less prevalent, but wind plus storage, an obvious proposition that, hey, this is a way to firm up renewables. My understanding from the marketplace is most of the utility RFPs now for new supply, most of the use cases now are looking at coupling solar plus storage or some kind of renewable plus storage. So it's going to continue to grow. And with the mandates and goals that are out there, there's going to continue to be an explosion in demand for new resources of this type, new resources in the storage space, new resources in the renewable space. And then you layer on top of that the Inflation Reduction Act, which we've also talked a lot about recently, and how that changes the value proposition, it changes how you pencil out these different projects. I'm sure that you guys have probably spent a lot of time internally talking about the IRA. I don't know if you want to share anything on this program, but that to me seemed like a game changer for companies in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bill, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you have a PV system in your house?
I'm embarrassed to say I do not.
So what would make you consider PV plus S?
I would have to look at what the upfront capital expenditure is and then how quickly I can make that money back.
Right. So it's cost and financial analysis that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, if it's close enough, I mean, I think a soft factor would be, okay, this is good because it's good for the environment, carbon reduction, et cetera. But I think I'm probably like most people, I'm going to look at the financial value proposition.
How long it takes to return your investment, so to speak. Right.
Sure.
So that's where IRA, that's where you kind of help give you incentive to accelerate your return on your investments. The other part is, well, gee, do I need to worry about the whole emergency backup issue? Right? That's another compelling event.
Sure.
Or like the folks in Florida, like the folks in Texas, and like the folks in California, which I lived in. By the way, seems like we've been raining for 4 weeks straight.
You need the rain, though.
And I don't have any power for all this time. So those are good compounding events. And the other part is how to make it easier for people to switch on to PV plus S. If I can make this installation process easier, so the guy spend maybe a day and a half on your roof, 30 minutes in your garage, that will be a lot easier for you to handle rather than go out of the house for a week.
Yes.
So those are the things that we talked about and how to make this product along with the educational incentive easier for homeowner or installer and help grow the desire to switch to renewable.
It's a great point, and it's a basic point, and it's one that I'm embarrassed that I didn't even think of when I asked the question about the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm so used to talking about the IRA in the context of okay, what does this mean for your company in terms of looking at projects, in terms of looking at the tax credit aspect for the company? But I didn't even think about, you're right, there are significant incentives now for an individual consumer. There's so much in that law. You raise a great and basic point that we probably should have talked about sooner on this podcast, which is what does this mean for the individual consumer? And you're right. Now I'm going to have to go back and look at the IRA with a completely different view and a completely different eye. And who knows, maybe that will be enough to get me to invest myself.
Right. Join the club.
I assume you have a home system for your own home.
Yes, I have. I'm on the technical side of the product. So there's a lot of things that we want to personally experience, right? In terms of the actual installation, the technical challenges. Remember, I run a bunch of nifty feature we want to be able to integrate and interface with. So those are things that I was focusing on our home's energy
Right.
system. But yes, I do have one. Proud owner of EPQ.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm starting to see it more because Virginia passed. I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, even though I work in DC. That's where I'm sitting as we record this podcast, is in Virginia. And we had an episode on this, I think, 2 years ago, because Virginia passed a law that really incented greater installation of storage. And so I'm starting to see systems pop up in my neighborhood, rooftop solar, solar plus storage. It's
Mhm.
interesting. When I drive around our region, you see a lot on the Maryland side because I think Maryland was far ahead of where Virginia was, but I think Virginia's catching up. I guess my message to the audience is to think about the incentives that are now enshrined in US law at the federal level, but also think about your different states because, as I said, it seems like now where I live, at least, I'm seeing more and more of the residential solar pop up. So it's an exciting time. Like I said, the IRA aspect to this, shame on us because we should have been all over the individual taxpayer incentives that we could have been taking advantage of already. So should we shift gears here? Because I think we're coming to the end of our time. But are you a sports fan, George?
Uh-oh.
I was going to ask for your Super Bowl prediction because as we record this,
Kansas City, of course.
Kansas City. Okay. Why do you say, of course?
Well, because 49er fan, we lost to Philadelphia.
I should have known you're a 49er fan based on your Stanford graduate and your California background. I think the 49ers had it tough because they literally did not have a quarterback in that
Yeah.
game. So they were down to having McCaffrey try to run some kind of wildcat offense. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I mean, at the time that we're recording this, it'll take a little while before this goes out to the world. So our picks will be validated by the time this goes out to the world. But I think I'm with you on the 49ers. I'm sorry, on the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to pull this out. Philadelphia is a good team, so we'll see.
Yeah. Grilled cheese.
Go Chiefs. All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the program today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I feel like we got into some good stuff, as they say, on both the residential side, the utility side, talked about the IRA. Why don't I give you one last chance here? If people want to learn more about Canadian solar, where should they look?
Easiest place will be Canadian Solar website. You select in North America because we are a global company. From there, looking for storage. You got to see all of the options there.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you being on. Hope you enjoyed your time. And until next time, we'll say thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Copyright Troutman Pepper Hamilton Sanders LLP. These recorded materials are designed for educational purposes only. This podcast is not legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individual participants. Troutman Pepper does not make any representations or warranties, express or implied, regarding the contents of this podcast. Information on previous case results does not guarantee a similar future result. Users of this podcast may save and use the podcast only for personal or other non-commercial educational purposes. No other use, including, without limitation, reproduction, retransmission, or editing of this podcast may be made without the prior written permission of Troutman Pepper. If you have any questions, please contact us at troutman.com.